Next item is a members' business debate on motion 18758 in the name of Shona Robertson on Social Security Scotland's first anniversary, and the debate as usual will be put without any questions being put. I would encourage members who wish to contribute to press their buttons, and I call Shona Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's a privilege to bring this debate to Parliament today, and I'd like to start by thanking my colleagues here today from across the parties who have supported this motion, giving us the opportunity to mark Social Security Scotland's first anniversary, and I look forward to listening to their contributions and hope that they help shape the future of social security in Scotland as they have its beginning. It was a proud moment for me when this Parliament passed the Social Security Scotland Bill. It was a proud moment for us all, for all of us who want to see a fairer, more respectful and dignified Scotland. And of course, great credit must go to all those who campaigned for many years for control over our welfare policy. This is indeed a good start. Across the UK, Scotland is showing the way forward, implementing a system based on the principle that social security is a fundamental human right. This principle has helped shape the body, has helped shape its charter. At its inception, the people of Scotland were asked how these social security powers should be used, and the message that came back was the UK system is stressful, it's complicated, it's impersonal and even inhumane. We were determined to see things differently, to deliver benefits humanely, personally and positively, to see social security as a fundamental human right. We asked people from all different backgrounds to shape our principles, to share their experiences, to help us build a system with them at the centre. From this, the Charter was formed, stating that social security is an investment in the people of Scotland, that social security is itself a human right, essential to the realisation of other human rights, and respect for the dignity of individuals is to be at the heart of the Scottish social security system. Since its establishment, the agency has headquartered in Dundee, something that of course makes me extremely happy, bringing over 700 jobs to the city, well paid and highly valued jobs in challenging economic times for the city. Very welcome indeed. A further 750, of course, at its base in Glasgow, and a further 400 people located in communities across Scotland, delivering face-to-face support to those who need it. Its first year has been a success. Audit Scotland's recent review found that the Scottish Government has delivered on the commitments it made for the first year, establishing a new agency which paid the first Scottish benefits, developing a social security charter, forming the Scottish Commission on Social Security, and undertaking important groundwork to support the delivery of future benefits and embedding new ways of working, supporting the phased delivery of the benefits, reflecting the principles of fairness, dignity and respect. The report also says that many challenges are still to be faced as more powers come to Scotland, and we don't doubt these challenges. But I don't think we fear them either. We see it as an opportunity to build a fairer future for all, and we'll build on what has already been done. Only yesterday, the Government announced the Job Start payment to support young people in a new job after a period of being unemployed. This comes on top of the Carers Allowance Supplement, which has helped over 77,000 people so far by providing payments of £35 million, in addition to the £157 million in carer allowance payments, on top of the 9,700 families supported through Best Start grants, and on top of the Scottish Child Payment, which will lift 30,000 Scottish children out of poverty, described as a game changer by anti-poverty campaigners. We see what has been done, and we can see what can be done, and we see what needs to be done. Because let's not forget the words of the UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights, who said, even while in Scotland they are frantically trying to devise ways to mitigate the worst features of the UK Government's benefits policy, the UK Government compassion for those who are suffering has been replaced by a punitive, mean-spirited and often callous approach to welfare. He went on to say, Scotland has used new powers to establish a promising social security system, a promising start. I know that we can do much more. I echo Social Security Secretary Shirley Ann Somerville when she said, and her calls for all social security to be devolved in Scotland, I think we've shown what we can do with that. What we want to do is to have the rest to support our people even more. We can create a system with the people of Scotland for the people of Scotland. The UN letter declares that poverty is a political choice. Well, let's not choose poverty, let's choose to end poverty. Let's choose a system with the people of Scotland, for the people of Scotland. Thank you. I look forward to contributions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I call Michelle Ballantyne to be followed by Jenny Mara.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It gives me great pleasure to open in this debate, and thank you, Shona Robertson, for bringing it forward. Marking the first anniversary of Scotland's Social Security Agency is important because it isn't often in this chamber that we find such a consensual issue, particularly not in recent weeks. But I think we can all remember the infectious optimism evident in Holyrood back in that April afternoon, when unanimously we passed the bill that enabled the creation of Social Security Scotland. It was the culmination of the largest devolution settlement since this Parliament opened, and the Social Security Act presented this Parliament with the opportunity to create something dynamic, exciting and new. As we've heard from Shona Robertson, and no doubt we will hear from the Cabinet Secretary later, David Wallace and the team at Social Security Scotland have done well to adapt to the challenges presented, both practically and at a policy level. Having visited the agency's offices in Dundee on a couple of occasions, I was very impressed with the enthusiasm with which the staff described their roles, as well as their desire to build a compassionate system tailored to Scotland's needs. I cannot fault them for the work they have done and will carry on doing, and I'd like to add my thanks today for all the work they have done to ensure the smooth delivery of the devolved benefits and the new ones that are being created. That said, it would also be foolish to rest on laurels just yet. What has been accomplished to date is absolutely an achievement, but a sense of perspective is required. The benefits that have been delivered by Social Security Scotland to date are just the tip of an iceberg, and it is of some concern that we are already seeing some delays. In June, the Cabinet Secretary announced a whole series of postponements. I'm glad to see that the funeral expense assistance promised in the summer has now arrived, albeit just a month late. The former Secretary of State, Amber Rudd, though, has warned of an impending cliff edge for disability benefits if the Scottish Government do not keep to their timetable, potentially affecting thousands of Scots each month when the DW assessment contracts expire in 2021. The importance of this date cannot be underestimated. With no mechanisms in place to provide disability assessments, there is a serious risk that the Scottish Government could be forced to guess eligibility, or worse, people may not receive benefits they are entitled to. The decision to bring the first instalments of the Scottish Child Payment forward threatens to disrupt these essential benefits. And while I welcome the Scottish Government's intention with this policy, I hope that they take the greatest of care to ensure that it does not affect the other benefits from the disability point of view that we absolutely need to deliver. Yes?
George Adam.
If it's quick.
I take on the members' attitudes with regards to disability benefits, but is it not hypocrisy coming from her, with her government in London have actually been attacking that very same community, and for her to come in here, or sorry, Presiding Officer, for the member to come in here and actually state that is an absolute disgrace.
Michelle Ballantyne.
Well, I think it's very sad of George Adam to suggest that it is disgrace to be concerned that people who are entitled to disability benefits may not get them if we don't meet the deadlines. I don't see that is in any way hypocrisy, and I think it's just, trying to have a political attack, which is inappropriate. There are some real concerns, and if you aren't able to take that on board, then, I think there is a problem. I actually think the Cabinet Secretary does take that on board, and I think she's actually working very hard to ensure that there isn't a cliff edge and that we don't miss those payments, but it is legitimate within this Parliament to express concerns. There are also a number of operational concerns that do need to be addressed. At the Public Audit Committee earlier this month, members did raise concerns about budgeting, staffing and capacity. Now, again, these are legitimate concerns, and I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary is working hard to ensure they're addressed. The senior government official involved in the new social security system was, for example, unable to provide the committee with even a ballpark figure as to how the Scottish Child Payment will affect the programme's long-term financial planning. And there was also some confusion around whether or not the programme would stick to its own timetable, with the relevant Scottish Government director telling the committee we are still working through the progress to understand whether we can hold to the dates that the Cabinet Secretary shared. So given those concerns around disability payments, I sincerely hope that this work is completed swiftly, and we are not faced with an autumn statement from the Cabinet Secretary detailing fresh delays to benefits that are already late. And I would have thought that George Adams would also want to make sure that that is the case. So just as a final point, I am hoping that the Cabinet Secretary will give us some information about what is to happen in terms of the ending of the lease of Dundee House, with, I understand, alternative premises yet to be identified. So given that we have got Wave 2 benefits coming, I hope we will be able to hear soon where the Social Security Agency is going to be located, because obviously they are going to face quite a lot of work with the new benefits coming and having to move. So I hope we can hear some information on that. But, you know, I am absolutely behind you in that I want you to get these things right, but I think it is legitimate for us to raise concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Milton. I call Jenny Mara to be followed by Bob Doris. Jenny Mara.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to begin by thanking Shona Robertson for bringing this debate today. Given the scale of Social Security Scotland's work, any time we can devote to debating it is to be welcomed. I had the great pleasure, Presiding Officer, on Monday of visiting Funeral Link in Albert Street in Dundee. It's a recent initiative to address locally some of the concerns around funeral poverty, and it provides advice for people and ways that they can cut down the cost of funeral and still give their loved ones a dignified funeral and send-off. I would ask the Minister to note that, of course, the funeral payment, Scottish funeral payment, started this week. So, but also the project, which is doing some very good work, is facing funding challenges already, and I'd be very grateful if she might look at that. Audit Scotland report, as Shona Robertson said, was very helpful recently, and it's important that this huge transfer of powers and public investment is very closely monitored to make sure that it is being done in the most efficient ways. And the Auditor General did highlight some issues around IT projects and the efficiency of those. And I'm sure the Minister has studied that report, but continuing scrutiny of the Parliament on the new agency and how it is being set up and the efficient use of public funds is very important. Of course, as Shona Robertson said, the new Social Security Agency is headquartered in Dundee with the promise of 750 jobs, and I understand 250 already employed. And the new agency has had, of course, its successes. Those new benefits that have been delivered and are planned will be a welcome boost to struggling families, and if delivered properly, may allow us to finally start cutting into Scotland's appalling and shameful poverty figures, which are particularly marked in Dundee. But of course, like all agencies, it's also had its teething problems. The delivery of the government's new Scottish Child Payment has raised concerns due to fears that the application-based process will impact uptake of benefits compared to an automatic payment process, requiring more form filling for applicants who have already been through the universal credit process and creating more work for agency staff. This despite a previous Social Security Minister, Jean Freeman, demanding a simpler, more streamlined approach to benefits applications than was previously administered from the Westminster Government. The decision to delay the devolution of a host of benefits means that we have not yet been able to maximise the full potential of that process, and has left thousands of Scots still dealing with the Department of Work and Pensions. But I hope that it is in the interests of an efficient transfer of powers and an effective transfer of powers that the Minister has delayed that process. I'd also like to raise the point, to note a similar point to Michelle Ballantyne, of the lack yet of a permanent base for the agency's headquarters. I think it's important for the headquarters of the agency to have a permanent house, but it's currently housed in Dundee City Council's headquarters, which is called Dundee House, and it's on an 18-month lease. Now, this lease is shortly going to come to an end. I asked the Chief Executive last week in the Audit Committee when that was. He wasn't sure when that was. But Dundee City Council are in the process of selling their headquarter building to a Canadian insurance company, I believe Canada Life, and then leasing it back from them. So I don't know if there are negotiations in the process at the moment, but I think it's really incumbent on the Minister today, as Michelle Ballantyne says, to give us an indication of when there will be a permanent base. Will they be moving out of Dundee House soon? There is a lot of empty office space in Dundee. There are whole buildings that are empty, perhaps requiring a bit of refurbishment that can certainly take 750 staff. So I think it's important for the future of the agency and its ability to plan its service delivery to get some clarity on that. I think I'll finish there. Thank you very much, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much, Ms Barra. And I call Bob Doris to be followed by Alison Johnson. Bob Doris.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And can I start off, as others have done, thanking Shona Robertson for bringing this debate to Parliament here this afternoon. Can I also thank the team at Social Security Scotland, both the public-facing side of the operation at the front line, but also those behind the scenes who make a substantial effort in developing the systems, the IT systems and the structures underpin the entire Social Security Scotland system network. Another key thank you, of course, are those with lived experience of the benefit system who have been key and at the heart of development of the implementation and the rollout of a variety of benefits through their experience panels and various other extensive consultations. That lived experience is crucial, as are the key principles of how Social Security Scotland should conduct its business, as outlined in the Social Security Charter, which again those with lived experience helped create. Social Security Scotland have, as they should do, sought to build a strong and positive relationship with not just those claiming, but with potential claimants based in dignity, respect and trust. The new Scottish social security system is already in its infancy, making a significant difference to the lives of many of my constituents. The Carers Allowance Supplement has put an extra £452 into the hands of 83,000 carers each and every year going forward. Many of them will be constituents of mine. The Best Start grant has a number of payments: the pregnancy and baby payment, the early learning payment and the school age payment, and they've been rolled out incrementally over the last year. 42,000 payments have already been made to 10,000 low-income families, £13 million paid out to date. That will have benefited many constituents in my constituency of Maryhill and Springburn and beyond. And it's a more generous contribution to the previous UK benefit, comparing like-by-like families. Those in Scotland, I think with 2 children, would receive £1,900. That's actually £1,400 more than had they stayed elsewhere in the UK, so a more substantial contribution as well. This week, as we've heard, was the launch of the funeral assistance grants, which will have £1,300 on average, because there's no set amount, contributing to those in low incomes to, as Jenny Mara outlined, at a time when you shouldn't have to worry about money, such a distressing time, to make a really significant contribution to giving a fitting service to loved ones. I noticed in that application, which was very interesting as well, as I was promoting it in social media, that you could do a paper application, you could do an online application, but there was a telephone helpline you could call. So that idea that it's not digital by default, and that's a really important principle as well. And I also very much welcome the expectation of Job Start grants and payments up to £400 for young long-term unemployed to be paid around spring next year. So a lot to welcome, and that's all building up trust. And I haven't even mentioned the child payments, and I think it's right that low-income households are seeing that child payment of £10 per week accelerated. So the first delivery for under 6 will be in 2021. And that, of course, then brings us on to disability assistance that has been mentioned by a few people. Now, the key thing for me, and I have sought these assurances from the First Minister at the Conveners Group meeting and at the Programme for Government, is that the commitment to make sure that those who would undergo a new PIP or DLA assessment by the end of the lifetime of this Parliament will do so under the new Scottish disability systems and not under the flawed, dreadful UK punitive system. And those reassurances have been consistently given. Of course, that's a challenge, and we have to scrutinise it, but let's do that in a supportive, constructive way for that better Scottish social security system that we all want to see. I think my constituents would want me to finish by saying this is money they are entitled to. There should be a sufficiency of funds to deliver it. But by goodness, what more we could do if every social security benefit was devolved to this place, particularly the hideous universal credit, which causes my constituents so much misery. So thank you to Shirley-Ann Somerville for her efforts in this, to Shirley Robinson for bringing this debate forward, but the team at Social Security Scotland for making a success of their first year. So happy birthday.
Thank you, Mr Doris. I call Alison Johnson to be followed by Jeremy Balfour. Alison Johnson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I too would like to thank Shona Robison for giving us the opportunity to debate this afternoon. The transfer of responsibility over some areas of social security to the Scottish Parliament is a major milestone on Scotland's devolution journey. It gives us the opportunity to reclaim the idea that when we provide a good, reliable income for the most vulnerable people in society, everyone benefits, and we need that more than ever. We have a UK system that continues to treat some of the people who need its help in the most heartless way possible, despite years of being called out by academics, by organisations representing people who need support, and now even the United Nations. However dedicated and compassionate many of the public servants who run it are, it is a system that often appears to be tone deaf to the needs of our most vulnerable citizens. As many members across the chamber will have experience of, my office has to help on a more and more regular basis people who are totally ground down by a system that simply doesn't seem to care what it puts people through. And that is the people who do ask for help. We know that some are so totally, bewildered and just exhausted by the complexity of the system that they give up. Others drop out of the system altogether. This affects take-up. We know that there are many millions of pounds unclaimed. And as has been mentioned already, this is people's entitlement. So this is where Social Security Scotland is so very important. And I'm so grateful that we have this opportunity to debate the agency's work so far. One of the most important tasks that agency has is to build a new culture around social security, sweeping away that culture of suspicion of people who ask for help and instead encouraging and empowering them to apply for what they're entitled to. And when they do, they should get help from a system that understands the challenges that people face in applying for and getting support, and takes away so many of the barriers that have been put there by the DWP. I think Bob Doris was highlighting the challenges that the digital by default model has, and making clear that we have to have different mechanisms in place for people to get in touch, to get the help they need. These things can be much easier said than done. And Social Security Scotland will need to undo decades of denigration of the very idea of social security and of the people who need its help. Staffing the new system with people who have lived experience of social security is absolutely a good first step, and I'd be very interested to hear from the Cabinet Secretary on that point in particular. The motion is rightly very positive about the promise of social security and the progress it's made so far, but there'll always be room to improve. While the number of complaints about Best Start grant are low compared to the number of applications, I note that the research referred to in the motion shows that the majority of complaints that have been made about Best Start grant have been upheld. And while I accept that the Scottish Child Payment could well be a huge boost to some of our poorest families, it is means tested and will face the challenge of take-up that almost all means tested payments have, in terms of ensuring that people are aware of their entitlement and encouraged and supported to apply. Dignity and respect are rightly at the heart of the work of the new agency, but we can't have dignity and respect if we simply don't have enough money. The Scottish Government is absolutely right to top up carers' allowance, and it's great to see Best Start paying out more than double the Sure Start maternity grant. But we have to continue to monitor these increases. Are they really good enough? The new rate for carers is still far below what they deserve, given the huge value of unpaid care, standing at over £10 billion a year. The real challenge, of course, will come when disability assistance for working age people becomes. It will replace PIP, which, according to Sheffield Hallam University research commissioned by the Social Security Committee, has taken an average of £2,600 from disabled Scots. Banning those unnecessary face-to-face assessments, a change in the law brought by Greens, will be an important part of that, as it should mean applicants get a fairer assessment of their needs. To close, Presiding Officer, Greens wish Social Security Scotland a happy first birthday and applaud the excellent work that has been done so far by the agency and its staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. I call Jeremy Balfour to be followed by the Cabinet Secretary. Jeremy Balfour.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I also thank Shona Robson for bringing forward this debate, and was happy to support the motion, and also wish Scottish Security Agency a happy birthday. I think this first few years will be very important for the agency as it sets the ground rules as it is to go forward. And I think it is very important that we understand the role of the agency and the other roles other parties have to play within it. One of the things there was cross-party support for when the bill and now the Act became law was that people who make applications will be entitled to independent advice and assistance throughout the whole process. Now, clearly the agency can help, but I would be concerned if some of the rumours I am hearing is that the agency think that that will be their role, not a third party's role. And I would be grateful if the Cabinet Secretary would confirm that from the date of application through the whole process, an individual will be entitled to that independent advice, and it will not be the agency's role to do that. I do think George Adams' intervention was disappointing in that we, as a Parliament, do have to scrutinise what the new agency is doing and going to do. And there has been lots of good work, and I think we have to acknowledge that and say well done to the agency. But if we as parliamentarians are simply not going to scrutinise things that do go wrong or raise difficult questions, sorry, no, I don't have time, then I think that would be disappointing. I do think there are some issues that Audit Scotland raised, and again, I think we just need to make sure that we are going in the right direction. Like Alison Johnson, I do think it's important that those with lived experience and other minorities are working for the new agency. But again, from the figures that I have seen, we are below the percentage that the new agency has set itself. And I do hope that the Scottish Government will encourage the agency to keep going for that. And we as a Parliament have to make sure that those with lived experiences are given the appropriate opportunities. Again, the Audit Scotland report pointed out that even in this first year, there have been a high level of contractors that have come in. There's been a lot of temporary staff. We haven't met the number of people that was envisaged that would be working for the new agency at this stage. And again, we have to make sure that what is delivered is being delivered appropriately. Is the IT, is the cyber security absolutely right? I have to say I have been impressed by going up to the agency and by presentations that me and Bob Doris went to at Scottish Government to think they are on track. But it is the role of this Parliament to make sure that it is delivered. Best Start grant is welcomed, but I think that was in many ways one of the most simple benefits that has been taken over by the new agency. And again, I think there have to be some questions asked as why did those that were refused first time, so many of them on appeal, get it? What lessons have we learned from that? Because as we go forward with perhaps more complex benefits, we have to make sure that we are getting it right first time as often as possible. So I do think we welcome the new agency. We welcome, I think, its principles and openness. But often, as we say in this Parliament, actions speak louder than words. And I think we need to see what actions happen, not only in the past years, but happen in the next few years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Balfour. And I call on the Cabinet Secretary, Shirley Ann Somerville, to wind up our debate.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I'm grateful to my colleague Shona Robinson for bringing this motion to the Chamber for debate today, and I think it's been another good opportunity to mark the many positive things that Scotland's new Social Security Delivery Agency has done in its first year. Before Social Security Scotland was even established, there were a lot of things said about the delivery of our new system, that it was going to be the single largest programme of work undertaken by any Scottish Government since devolution. The new agency would make more payments in a week than the entire Scottish Government had previously made in a year, and all of those things remain just as true a year after the launch of our new agency as they were before. The challenge is no smaller, the level of complexity is still as high and indeed is growing. But we have made good progress. In its 12 months, Social Security Scotland, ably supported by colleagues from the wider Social Security Directorate of the Scottish Government, have successfully launched the Carers Allowance Supplement, the Best Start grant family of 3 separate cash payments, and Best Start food scheme, and as recently as this week, of course, the new funeral support payment, 6 benefits in 12 months. This is on top of the underlying work completed by the programme and the agency around, for example, the Charter and the important groundwork for the future benefits that's already well in train. And of course, we go on with the launch of the Young Carer Grant in the autumn of this year. With cooperation of the UK Government, Job Start payments will be delivered in spring 2020. By next summer, we'll launch the first benefit in the Scottish Disability Benefit family. And by the end of 2020, the Scottish Child Payment, a game changer in the fight to end child poverty in Scotland, will begin. In early 2021, of course, we will move forward with our replacement to PIP. All of this is being done against the background of our continuing overarching effort to deliver a person-centred system, a system founded on our principles enshrined in the Social Security Act, passed, of course, unanimously by this Parliament, that reflects the commitments in our Social Security Charter, and as a number of members have quite rightly pointed out, is co-designed by people with lived experience of the UK system. And I, in particular, would like to take this opportunity once again, Presiding Officer, to thank everyone that's been involved in the experience panels, in our working groups. They have played such a large and important part in delivering what we have today, because it's fundamental that we have a system that has a belief that social security is a human right at its heart. But I'd now like to come to a number of the points which members raised during the debate. Can I begin with Michelle Ballantyne? Let's start on a point of consensus. I do recognise that she welcomed the enthusiasm of the staff and of the work that she's seen when she's visited the agency's headquarters, and I'm pleased that that was the impression she had. It certainly is every single time I go. Can I warn her gently, however, around the language that she's using around the Joint Ministerial Working Group and some of the quotes, very selective quotes that she quoted from the previous Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, Amber Rudd, when she discussed a cliff edge because the DWP assessments will end at a particular date. The entire way that conversation went, as is shown in the minutes of that ministerial working group, was two governments recognising the time limitations that we are under to get a joint project, which is the devolution of social security to the Scottish Parliament, underway. And I may have had many disagreements with Amber Rudd on a number of issues on benefit strategy, particularly reserved benefits. But on that quote and in that meeting, it was an exceptionally constructive meeting. It's the way that she and I worked together in her time as Secretary of State, and I certainly look forward to that same constructive approach with the new Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. We are absolutely recognising, both within the Scottish Government, within the UK Government, everybody that's involved in this process, that there is, of course, a step change, just as Audit Scotland said, as we move towards Wave 2. We recognise absolutely that step change. We're well aware of the challenges ahead, and I'm confident that the work that the Government and the agency is putting together will stand us in good stead. Can I say absolutely and clearly today the Scottish Child Payment does not threaten disability payments. The reason that when Aileen Campbell made her statement in June that she announced the changes in the timetable to certain disability payments was to ensure that we could deliver the Scottish Child Payment and ensure that we deliver the rest of the disability benefits, carers benefits, the case transfer and so on in a way that ensures we're doing it as fast as we can, but never losing sight of that safe and secure transition. And I hope that Michelle Ballantyne will take that reassurance today. I will, of course, update Parliament on the further work we've been doing on the Scottish Child Payment in due course. Can I turn now to Jenny Mara's contribution? I'm afraid I think the constituency organisation that she mentioned probably doesn't sit within my portfolio remit, but Aileen Campbell's. So I would invite her to write to my colleague to raise any concerns that they may have had on that. I don't think that one will be personally coming to me, but I'm sure Ms Campbell will return to Jenny Mara's points in detail. And it is very, very important that we look at the range of options that we could have had for Scottish Child Payment. The example was given around automation and whether that had been considered or the benefits that that could have had. There is undoubtedly benefits from automation. There's undoubtedly the reason why we looked at that as part of the discussions around the Scottish Child Payment, but it was determined that that wasn't the quickest way that we could deliver the payment, and it was important for us to move quickly on that. And I would refer Jenny Mara to the policy position paper that the government put out around the Scottish Child Payment, again around June statement made by Aileen Campbell. Just moving on now to the discussion around the offices in Dundee, which I appreciate that some members have mentioned, particularly Jenny Mara. The Dundee House lease is an 18-month lease initially, but with a 6-month rolling lease beyond that. We are, of course, considering wider options and our permanent base due to commercial confidentiality. She will unfortunately get the same reply as she did from, I believe, David Wallace when he was at her committee last week, that I cannot go into detail of that, but I hope again I can reassure her that we are doing everything and the agency is doing everything to move that on as quickly as possible. Again, I can reconfirm. Certainly.
Jenny Mara.
She'll forgive me if once we check the official report. I believe the Chief Executive didn't say it was down to commercial confidentiality. I think what he said, it was due to restrictions in the commercial property market in Dundee, which I don't share that perception. There is a lot of available office accommodation in the city. So a little bit further clarity from the Minister on that would be really welcome.
Cabinet Secretary.
Certainly. I think what the point I'm trying to make is that I can't go into the details of the work that we're doing around what permanent, what offices we're looking at and the work that we're doing to achieve that permanent office due to commercial confidentiality. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to go into the details of that, but I do recognise the point that Jenny Mara makes about the importance of making a quick decision, if at all possible, on that. There were a number of points, of course, raised by members, which I don't have time to get into detail today, but Alison Johnson is quite right to point around the recruitment culture that's required, and I'm pleased that the number of staff who have a disability or a long-term condition within social security, for example, is the same as the proportion within the wider Scottish public. I hope, again, that's a reassurance that we are moving forward with our recruitment in a very serious way to ensure that those with lived experience are part of the agency itself, and also that the agency reflects the wider Scottish society. In closing, Presiding Officer, I would like to pay tribute to the more than 400 staff of Social Security Scotland who, since the agency was established last year, have put money into the pockets and bank accounts of over 91,000 people across Scotland. Payments which, in a number of cases, they would not have got under predecessor schemes. All of this has been done with the support of the dedicated and hard-working staff within the Social Security programme. Their work has been absolutely critical in getting us to a point of having an agency with the systems there to deliver it. In conclusion, there is much I think we can be rightly proud of, both in this government, within this wider Scottish Parliament, and I hope in Scotland about what we have done within our first year of having a social security agency. Yes, we will have lessons to learn. Yes, there is much still to be done, but I believe we have set a very, very proud and firm foundation that you can indeed build a social security system with dignity, fairness and respect at its heart.
Thank you very much, Cabinet Secretary. And with that, we conclude this debate, and I suspend Parliament until 2:30 this afternoon.